The Splatoon franchise is almost 10 years old, and recently I started looking back into the history of metas to see how tier lists changed with each update and new game. This made me ask a question. What weapon is the biggest loser in Splatoon history? Not the worst weapon overall, but the weapon that fell off the hardest, and today really isn't more than a shadow of its former self. H-3 Nozzlenose. More specifically, its H-3D iteration from Splatoon 2 and Cherry H-3 from the original Splatoon. Each were one of the best weapons for the respective game. But I want to ask you, when was the last time you've seen anybody using H-3 in a high-level competitive set? If your answer is, I don't know, then you're like me and you'll agree that H-3 has had one of the most devastating downfalls out of any weapon in Splatoon history. H-3 is a semi-automatic burst fire weapon that has the potential to kill in one burst if the player is able to hit all 3 shots. However, if you miss a single bullet from that burst, your time to kill basically triples, because you have to wait for the next burst of ink to fire. This meant that for very skilled players, H-3 is a decent paying main weapon with good range that, combined with a great special and the potential to one-burst enemies in an instant, made it a scary weapon to match up against. In Splatoon 3, this seems to no longer be the case. Why? To explain, let's first take a look into the past and look at the kids that made H-3 the weapon that once dominated in 2 very different games. Cherry H-3 was added to Splatoon 1 in June of 2016 as part of the second half of Sheldon's Picks. With Splash Wall and Bubbler, it didn't have any tools to help it paint, but in Splatoon 1's late quick respawn invincibility meta, this wasn't a problem at all. With its ink consumption at only 1.6%, it could throw a wall and still fire 8 bursts, and since it painted really well, you could get a special really fast. Bubbler was the main reason this kit really worked. A special at only 180 points with 4.5 seconds of invincibility that can be shared with your teammates simply sounds way too broken. Oh, and did I mention that with Splatoon 1's system of light, medium and heavy special depletion, H-3 only lost 40% of its special charge because it was one of the light special depletion weapons? This gave it the edge over other bubble weapons like the Zinc Mini Splatling, which lost a whopping 75% of its special charge upon dying. In Splatoon 2, H-3 took a first hit right at the launch of the game. Its range got nerfed by almost 10% and ink consumption increased to 1.8. It also suddenly had to compete with not only one, but 2 alternatives, Splattershot Jr. and NZAP. Not only did they all share the same special, but NZAP had the exact same kit as H-3. Ink armor like Tentacula nowadays was the one dominant support special, and you could rarely see a team without one. As a normal shooter weapon, NZAP really was much easier to learn, and for the most time also required less points to charge a special. Of course, if you were an amazing H-3 player, you could still use the weapon, but for new players, it didn't seem like it was worth the investment when you had a weapon with the exact same role that was just so much easier to use. Even if H-3 never overtook Zap as the most used armor weapon, it still saw much use in the main power-up meta, which was an ability added in version 4.3.0 in December of 2018. This ability had different effects depending on the weapon you were using. Some got more range or better paint, but H-3 saw the return of an old friend. Damage up. In Splatoon 1, damage up and quick respawn shape when we think of the game today. With MPU now in Splatoon 2, H-3 could deal up to 49.9 damage per shot. It was enough to give you a 2-shot kill more often than not. H-3, a mid-range support weapon, suddenly became a killing machine again. With its popularity shooting up, the following updates gave their best to make H-3 less effective, gradually increasing its special points to 220p, with its ink consumption increased by 25%. This meant that it had to spend more time recharging ink, which made it a lot harder to compete against Splattershot Jr. and NZAP in terms of armor and paint output. After Cherry played a major role in Splatoon 1, H-3D still was one of the 3 most popular armor weapons, and together with Bamboo, CDS and K-Pro, shaped the MPU meta of Splatoon 2. Surely, it would also be strong in Splatoon 3, I thought. So now, let's leave the past behind and take a look at the present and maybe possible future of the H-3 Nozzlenose. In Splatoon 3, without main power-up or damage up, everything changed. Higher damage let it combo with dozens of options and made players rely less on one-bursting enemies, which also made the weapon kill a lot more reliably. It's not always about how good a weapon can be in theory at its best, but how good it's on average over time. Even after H-3 got its damage increased from 41 to 44 in version 7.2.0 to compensate for no damage up, this didn't change at all, which means that either this increase wasn't significant enough, or there's another factor holding this weapon back. In theory, H-3 Splatoon 3 kits aren't bad at all. Point Sensor and Tentacula or Wall with Bubbler could both be pretty viable options on a bunch of other weapons, but they either don't fit H-3's playstyle or simply get outclassed by other weapons. First, the in my opinion worst of the two, H-3D. Wall is a very useful sub-weapon that has great synergy with weapons like Squeezer, 52 and 96 Deco, and I think that it even fits pretty well with H3, as proven by Cherry H3 in Splatoon 1. Putting up a wall lets you fight weapons and likely still win the fight even if you miss 1 or 2 shots. With its worst ink consumption, you can't get off as many shots after using a wall compared to Splatoon 1, but the more important problem of this kit is its special, Big Bubbler. Take a look at any tier list and you'll notice a common theme among bubble weapons. The better the weapon is at easily killing people that try to enter the bubble, the higher they usually rank. Roller, Splattershot Jr., Blaster and Decapitator are the perfect examples for this. All of these weapons can lock you out with their special because running up trying to get inside the bubble simply has too low of a chance to succeed. Roller and Blaster have high kill power to keep out rushing opponents, and Junior or Decapitator can simply put a bomb inside the bubble. H3 can't do any of that. If you miss a shot or two, your kill time is too long, and you also don't have a bomb that would deny enemies from entering the bubble. This also applies to H3's Tacticooler kit. As a support weapon, it's simply always better to have a bomb that can help you put out additional paint and chip damage. So let me suggest 2 alternative kits that would fit H3 and elevate the weapon to the top half of every Splatoon 3 tier list. First, as I said, replace Point Sensor with either Auto Bomb or obviously the best bomb in the game, Fizzy Bomb. Fizzy Bomb is awesome at providing additional paint to charge your special, it's great for dealing chip damage, and takes only 60% of your ink tank. Alternatively, Auto Bomb can work pretty well, since it's the go-to bomb for weapons that already struggle with ink management. With only 55%, Auto Bomb is the cheapest lethal bomb, so you don't have as much downtime to recharge ink. And it also can serve H3 to discover shocking players. Just copying NZEP's kit again might be fine, but Suction Bomb's biggest downside would be its ink consumption at 70%, which H3 really struggles with after the ink consumption nerfs it received. For the H3D kit, I would simply replace Big Bubbler with Triple Ink Strike at around 200 points. This would make H3D the only mid-range shooter with that special, and I think that it could work pretty well. Splash Wall helps the weapon to take fights more comfortably. It would have to contend with Neo Splash for slots in most comps, but I think that paired with a few buffs to the main weapon, this would absolutely be possible. Neo Splash isn't a great fighter, but with Wall I think H3 could manage in this meta. Both of these kits would enormously profit from a buff to its ink efficiency, but realistically I would like to revert the final ink efficiency nerf it get with the 5.4.0 update in Splatoon 2, increase its damage by 2 more points from 44 to 46, and maybe increase its paint by 6%. To me, H3 has been the mid-range shooter support weapon this game is missing. With how incredibly strong Sniper Rifle has been over the last year, we really didn't get to see many other cooler options, and only recently NZEP and Edit Splatling became slightly more popular. For the longest time of Splatoon 3, the support role we were used to seeing in Splatoon 2 almost died out completely, and I think that a good H3 kit could have been the solution to that. I still look back fondly at the time I made H3 in Splatoon 2, and I think that mastering H3 can be an incredibly satisfying journey. Let me know your thoughts on H3 in the comments, and also suggest your ideas for alternative kits. I'm curious to know your ideas. Thanks for watching, and see ya in the next one.